Hello, and a very warm welcome to our first in a series of webinars around building confidence. The aim of these webinars is to hear from professionals in the world of coaching, and one of the key themes they've highlighted when we've been preparing for the webinars is the importance of the support network around you, which is where nutrition and feeding come in amongst many other things. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Katie Williams, and today I have two great guests who I'm delighted we could bring together for a Dengie webinar. Jo Burns-Firth and Vic Brant. Jo is a British show jumping coach who's competed in British show jumping competitions for 30 years. And as a junior and young rider, she competed regularly at the Royal International Horse Show and Hoys, amongst other places, and was selected for the European teams. Nowadays, Jo tends to produce young horses and spends a lot of time coaching riders of all ages and abilities, helping them to realise and achieve their goals and dreams. And alongside Jo, we have Vic, who you may already know as the Wimpy eventer. She has a huge following on social media, providing inspiration and motivation, I think, to us all as we share in her riding and family exploits. And Vic's going to be explaining much more about her experience, how she overcomes her wimpy tendencies and builds her confidence. So that's going to be really interesting to hear. We also have Claire Akers, who is Dengie's performance horse nutritionist, who works with both Jo and Vic at the camps that they run. She's also a keen competitor herself, so may well be tempted into sharing her thoughts too. As ever, we will be recording the webinar and it will be on our YouTube channel in the video section in the next few days. But for now, it's over to Jo, who's actually going to talk about what confidence really is. So Jo, I hope you can see and hear me. I need to hand you the control. Slide control.
This where it all goes wrong when you give me the technology.
I'm sure it won't. Okay, now according to my Zoom, you should be able to move forward if you want to on the slides.
Okay. I'm not seeing what I saw earlier for the move forward.
Okay, hang on. Let's see.
Oh, got it now.
Perfect.
Okay, so one of the things I get asked regularly as a coach, or when I ask what a rider would like to know about, is they come in and say, I want you to give me confidence. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that? So I've looked forward into what is confidence, and I'm going to throw that over to Vic. What would you class confidence as, Vic?
Oh, it's a can of worms, isn't it? So, and I'm just gonna fill in a little bit in that Jo is my coach as well. So, I think probably 5 years ago, I first came to Jo, and I think she will recall as well as I do, you know, the first thing I said was, I'm shit and I just need you, rubbish. And I just need you to let me, you know, to try and help me be less. So I think confidence for me is just feeling like you have the brain power to be methodical enough to actually release what you know you can do without feeling all of these other factors that make you feel like you can't do it. So confidence for me is definitely feeling like self-empowerment and self-belief in the ability to be able to do what I know I can do and be able to make the steps to improve on that with the help of somebody that can guide you. And it's really hard to explain when you're that nervous in a lesson situation to poor Jo that's standing in the middle going, I don't know how you perceive confidence, because everyone perceives it differently, don't they? So for me, it's definitely self-belief and having the processes to be methodical around building on ability.
I think that's amazing. I think the first thing I always go to is self-belief. And so I've put here a few of the things. So a firm trust in oneself, a feeling of certainty, being reliant, being bold, and having self-belief. And so then my job is to give the people the tools to have that self-belief, which is quite often tricky. So then I'm skipping already. Getting excited with having the controls.
It's what happens when your adrenaline's up, though, isn't it?
So I'm putting ways to improve your confidence, because that's my job, is to improve confidence, and positive thinking is definitely one of them. I'm known for being positive. You know, if I fell down the stairs, I'd be going, wow, did you see how fast I fall and how many bruises I've got? You know, that's me. And like you said, Vic, training and lessons, And then I've put practice, but practice what you've learned correctly, because people think practice makes perfect, but actually practice makes permanent. So if you're practicing incorrectly, you're creating a bad thing, not a good thing. So you need to have those lessons so you can go away and practice the correct thing that's going to improve you. Knowledge for me is amazing, so I never stop learning. And then when you feel confident, you feel competent, and then that again gives you confidence. And one of my favorites is avoid perfection. And I think actually you put this the other day, didn't you?
I did. It's like we're on the same page, Jo.
Yeah. But people strive for perfection, and it's just not going to happen. Where you can do what you can do is do your best. You can give something 110%, and then you can go away knowing that you've given your best. And if your best isn't, you know, brilliant on that day, it just gives you somewhere to start from and move forward from. So for me, it's about giving your best.
Just interjecting, in your teaching style in particular, I don't think, and let's average it out, so what, a lesson a month for the last 5 years, we're talking like 50 sessions. I don't think I've ever heard you say anything negative to me about my riding, and I think that's really important. So you'll always say at the start, you know, what do you want to get out of this? And even at the end, when I haven't got what I've wanted, it's always really, you've always mindful of turning everything into a positive. And I know that, like the last session I had, I cried at the end, but and it wasn't necessarily happy tears either, but everything that we talk through in our lessons is always spun on a positive way. So it's like, well, all right, you're not on that horse anymore, but this horse is great and you're doing a really good job. And I think it's always maintaining that lasting positive impression as well at the end.
Yeah, and reflection's a positive tool before as well. So I've had people leave a lesson and we may not have achieved what we wanted in that session, but we reflect on what did go right. And also you can learn from what goes wrong. So just because a session didn't go correct, it doesn't mean you can't go away and learn from that and move forward. And so I think mistakes are often a massive learning point. You know, sometimes if a lesson goes amazingly, what have you taken away from it? That you're doing great. Sometimes it has to unravel a little bit.
I don't know, I've never been in that position, so
sometimes it has to unravel a little bit for you to have the tools, or to be given the tools to stick it back together, if that makes sense. So I've put next, if I can poke and not skip, build on your strengths and accept your imperfections, because people, when they come to a lesson, they're very, very quick to tell me, you know, their bad points or what they've done wrong or what they need to work on. But actually, sometimes you need to take a look at your strengths and build on that and make it your superpower, rather than telling me everything that's bad. So I've put here, Vic, some of my strengths, which we'll maybe go through later, but tell me what are yours?
I know, and do you know what? I should have preempted this question, because I've been asked it before by you, and it's such a hard one, isn't it? So everybody listening now, you try and think of a strength and say it out loud. It's really hard because you feel like you're blowing your own trumpet, don't you? But actually, and what I've said before is that underneath all of the lack of confidence that I've suffered with over the last 10 years, I feel like I'm actually a really good natural rider. I ride with feel, I am competent, I have a very good solid foundation of position and just natural way of feeling the horse, and I feel adaptable as a rider, and that's my strength. So but even just saying that out loud makes me feel a bit like I'm gonna just gag a bit, because I just boasted about, oh, I'm really good. But actually, do you know what? I am good, and I'm owning that. So yeah, I am a good natural rider with a nice position that, if my confidence allowed, I would be really capable.
It's just interesting what you said, because I think, and I've seen it before, that people with self-belief can sometimes end up being more successful than people who are technically correct but have no self-belief. And so, and at your last camp, someone said to me, do you not think that's arrogance? And I was like, no, yeah. I don't. I think, can you remember that? And I was like, no, yeah. I don't think it is. I think you can believe you can do something, so you go out and do it. you're not being big-headed. You just think, yeah, I can do this. It's kids. I wish I could bottle what kids have got. You know, they just get on and they kick and they point in the general direction and they're doing it. And we're always thinking about the consequences, and that's what holds us back. So there's nothing wrong in saying I can do this, this, and this. When I went skiing, she said to me, you ski beautifully, but something's holding you back. And I was like, yeah, it's the fear of falling over and breaking something, and then I can't ride. And so, you know, just because you're technically perfect doesn't mean you have this fear that still stops you achieving. And it's just finding what gets you beyond that. So for me, I love goal setting and planning, and people can sometimes think that goal setting is a negative thing because, you know, if you don't achieve your goals, then that can have a negative impact. But we'll talk about, you know, making those smaller goals to get you on the way. And I've talked about my positive attitude, and I'm willing to learn and open to change. Yeah, and resilient. And I'd say you're pretty resilient. You put yourself out there and you keep having a go.
Yeah, keep failing and getting back up. No, I just, do you know, and I very nearly stole that, because I do feel like over the years it's taken a lot of resilience not to just jack it in. You know, like I've had kids and I thought, yeah, I could just hang my boots up now. I won an event. That's all I ever wanted to do. I thought I could hang my boots up then. But actually, there's something in me that just can't do it. So yeah, resilience, or probably more stubbornness. And actually, still good quality, I feel like. I'm really stubborn. I'm absolutely not refusing to give up. No way. No. So yeah, I think, but I just think anybody that's watching right now, try and think of a strength and say it out loud. I think it's so hard to do.
But a bit empowering at the same time.
Yeah,
I mean,
kind of.
Everybody can get out there and I bet you they can tell you something that they want to improve, but saying something that's a strength is a whole different thing. And then you've got to think about, I think another one of your strengths is obviously how you inspire people, because when you come to the camps, they've all come because you've inspired them too. So that's got to be a strength as well.
Yeah. I think it's very easy to deflect all of the goodness that you should be giving to yourself onto others. And I think that's probably, I've emptied my cup over the years onto everybody else around me, in that I then put myself down, you know, and I think I've put myself down because I feel like perhaps I've got nothing left because I've given it to everyone else. But at the same time, it makes me feel really good inside. So you kind of weighing up that balance of helping others, but then also giving a bit back to yourself as well.
Yeah. And Natalie's just put there, enthusiasm is a strength. And I totally and utterly agree with that, Natalie. Yes, it is. Also, organisation. I wouldn't know anything about that. I'd love someone to be organised and come into my life. And I've had a few people saying that they're really organised and they have their lists and this, that, and this. And I'm like, I need one of you. Unfortunately, that is not one of my strengths. I'm more like organised chaos.
Jo, do you mind if I ask you a question? Because I think there's so many fascinating things I'm writing down that I want to ask you at the Q&A. But just one thing while you and Vic have talked about it. In terms of Vic saying like she's emptied and put all of her enthusiasm and inspiration onto other people, do you think that's quite a female trait? And have you experience of coaching chaps and men and boys maybe in the kids, and do they respond differently if you ask them about strengths? Are they much more able
probably, yeah, they're more confident in themselves. Yeah, probably women do have a little bit more self-doubt. And children only really have self-doubt if parents put it on them, you know. And when I say it like that, it's like if a parent's going, oh, you know, your pony's too fast, and all of a sudden the kid's going, oh, the pony's too fast. Or actually I go, kick it on, speed is fun. And all of a sudden they're smiling. Do you know what I mean? It's just spinning it around and yeah, and thinking about it in a different way sometimes, I suppose. And then going back to what Vic said about emptying your cup, I think that's emotional intelligence. And as a coach, sometimes I'm absolutely mentally exhausted when I've come out of the arena, because you've been giving 110% to every rider in that ring, and you think, actually, wow, I've got nothing left. And quite often when Vic has her wild parties on a night, I have to be the fun police and go have a nap, because I'm just all I'm all positiveness out.
Yes, but it also, I think people underestimate how much effort and energy goes into thinking and communicating. It's like if you're naturally someone that's coaching, even still, it actually takes a lot of energy and thought, and people don't realize how tiring it is trying to engage and maintain that level of interaction.
You might have one setup in the arena and 10 different clients and give 10 different lessons, because you've got 10, 10 totally different issues, and you have to address them differently, and you have to do that within that moment, decide what you're going to do, make a plan, do whatever, and it is quite tiring, and being positive for other people, it can be draining. So like you can be all worn out, and sometimes I say to my husband, I'm coached out and I just need a few days off, because you just need to recharge the batteries.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah. Okay, so then we'll go to the one that everybody likes to discuss, and that's areas that they would like to improve. So Vic, what would be your area?
I think for me at the moment is definitely more prevalent than any is just acceptance of circumstance, and changing what focusing on what you can change, and just really washing over what you can't. And I've been a bit of a spoiled brat lately, in that I have a really nice horse that I can ride. She's lovely, we get on really well, she's very capable, yet all I can think about is how much I miss Pat. And I feel like I can't do anything about that right now, so we've just got to it's just washing over what the things that you can't change, and being able to focus on the things you can. That's what I'd like to improve. Let's not get too deep into it, otherwise Vic will start crying.
We don't want Vic crying.
Wash over that.
I think acceptance of what you can and can't do is massive. And back in the day, I used to jump the big tracks, and when I decided that with work and that I couldn't, I almost felt like I was letting myself down, because I was only jumping 110, when actually many people strive to jump that level. And when I stopped beating myself up and started enjoying the horses, I actually got much better. I still do get much better results, because I just go with no great expectations, and I want the boys to jump well, me to enjoy myself, and whatever level that is, have great fun, and that makes a massive difference. So whether you're doing 100 or an 80, as long as you're enjoying the sport and loving your horse, I really don't think it matters.
Yeah, and I think appreciating the smaller wins as well.
Yeah.
I don't celebrate the small things as much as I should. Like just going round and jumping round a 70 the other day. We did our first clear round in 10 years. So 2-pole P became clear round P for the first time ever. And I just feel like, that I should have been really proud of that.
Deserves some Prosecco, that.
Yeah, but I tell you what, it took me nearly a week to post the video, because I was embarrassed about how it looked. Because I was striving for that look of like we were really together, and it didn't look how it looked on Pat, and same old broken record. I didn't celebrate the win that I should have been. I should have been really proud of that, and I should have posted it straight away and been like, yes, that's my goal achieved, but I didn't. So just being able to ignore those negatives would be amazing.
Yeah, and I think celebrating the small wins, and what you've always got to think is, when you think, oh, I'm only doing 70, is there many people out there striving to do 70, and that is their big goal. So you've got to look what people are seeing from the outside, and I think enjoying yourself, enjoying your horse, and doing it to the best of your ability, that's what people want to see. And if we win, that's even better, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've put areas of improvement. One of mine is fitness and weight. Like in show jumping, there are all these lovely slim girls, and I'm a little bit chubbier. And I remember, Western Lawns, I said, oh, you can take your jackets off, it's 27 degrees. And I'm thinking, God damn it, I like my jacket on, it hides my curves. But I've actually learned to accept that sometimes being chubby helps you when you fall off. You don't hurt yourself so bad, and I can still do all the things that other people can do. And
only there's a bit more cushioning when you're
a bit more cushioning. And like, I had quite a bad accident, I don't know, 10 weeks ago, and the doctor looked at me like gobsmacked, like, I cannot believe nothing is broken. And I said, I think it's my chub, to be fair. So, sometimes you just have to accept that it's not always a bad thing. I still strive to be better, and I do my Pilates, and I do all the other things, and try to stay away from Cadbury's chocolate, but you know, sometimes you just have to do it. You have to love life. So, you know, but you know, saying work on your strengths, and we do try to improve our areas of weakness, but you know, if that Cadbury's pops in, then you just have to eat it. That's what I say. So have you any questions about my Cadbury's habit, Katie, or are we discuss
I'm being respectfully quiet for that one. Just,
we have to do that. Okay.
I'm not the diet police, so I'm not the diet police.
No. So one of the massive things that I think is to log your success, because what happens is when people do get successful, they want more success. So these are two pictures of Freddie. Freddie is the bane of my life, but he is also the most special horse. He has taught me so much. And this picture here probably got a lot more reaction than the other one on the right, because here I'm eating Freddie's ears. And Freddie, there was a poo bin at the outside of the arena, and I could not get Freddie round the turn to the fence because he was obsessed with the poo bin. And actually this picture, as I'm admiring his ears, was a turning point in his career, because I came away from this show and thought, I must have Freddie more around my inside leg and into my outside hand so I can get him near the poo bin to get over the fence. And I went home and I worked on my flat and had some really good flat lessons. And then I got the second version of Freddie, who he is phenomenal. But the one thing he has taught me is to have no expectations, because phenomenal Freddie arrives 90% of the time at shows, but sometimes fun time Freddie on the left still exists. And, you know, I think you have to log your success. So I often tell my riders, you know, write down your lessons, keep photographs, track where you've come from, because when you're going great, you always want more, but sometimes you just have to check in and remember where you've come from. So what you think, so you thinking 70 is, oh God, I've only jumped 70, Vic. Last year, you'd have liked to clear round on 2.P, and now you've got your clear round, but you want it bigger, and that's the thing. So by logging your process, your progress, you start to see where you've come. So I know that you've got a little diary hidden there, Vic, that you were going to discuss. So you're going to get that out?
Yeah, so this is not a plug by any stretch. I just have to point out, because people have to these days, don't they? But I think any planner is great, but I personally have stumbled across this, and I bought it at, I think it was a show earlier this year from a trade stand. And I bought it because of, oh, and I've just flipped to the right page. So actually I'll flip to a different one of those because it's got all my secrets on it. But so each month it has a goals and plans. This is probably in reverse for anybody that's watching the camera, but it's goals and plans, and it says, what's your biggest goal for the next 5 weeks? When do you want to reach the goal? What's the first step? How will you know when you've achieved it? And then it gives you a second opportunity to create another one. And then each day, so then it's got a week to view. It's got a habit tracker, so you can write down things in here. I personally put in there 2 litres of water and yoga, and I tick them off. And then you've got priorities for the week and a to-do list, and then your bits and bobs that you're doing throughout the week. And I just think, I find it really overwhelming sometimes when I look at what I've written there, when I'm really enthusiastic on either a Sunday night or a Monday morning. I do that and I'm like, oh yeah, all guns blazing. I get to Thursday, I'm absolutely exhausted. I look at what I'd written for the week and I think, oh God, am I actually going to get any of that done? But you know what? I just think it's a good starting point for the week is to fill out something that you really would like to achieve for the month, the week, the year, whatever, and just keep revisiting it, even if it feels overwhelming, because you can break it down even further for the following month. And I think sometimes there's things that if they overlap into the next week, I've now learned not to get hung up about it. And I think just being able to log the planning for me is really important. But like Jo said, her planner, and we just went through this before we came on the call, was,
might sneak it out.
Yeah, get it out, because it's really great in that it celebrates success as well as planning. So hers had what did you do great this week, or what are you taking, like what's your biggest achievement? And I think that's something that everybody should have. If you have a planner, even just add it in yourself at the bottom, like what's your biggest achievement of the day or your biggest achievement of the week. Sometimes mine is just being able to wash up before 9 p.m. you know, but like it's an achievement some days, you know, when like there's just crap everywhere and there's toys and there's horses to do, and you know, it's an achievement to have got washed up and all the pots put away, and so you're waking up the next day to not a mess, you know. Like I just feel like celebrating those small wins I'd find really useful if I had that prompt like you've got, Jo.
Yeah, so I've got the ultimate show jumping training, but they do this in dressage, cross country, eventing, and they do it for the general rider too. And it has you can track your lessons. It does have targets for the beginning of the week, and it does have what was awesome this week. And sometimes my what was awesome was I've had it. So I have this horse, Sunny, Tempting Business. He's my favorite. He's my pat that you like. Pat is to you. He's my comfy slippers. He's my happy place. And at the beginning of this year, I didn't know whether he was going to compete again, but he is, and it's amazing. And I now appreciate every single round I have on him. But sometimes what was awesome this week was he took off with me down the track, and you know I couldn't stop. But quite clearly he's having fun, and I didn't think I'd have that back. So you know sometimes what's awesome is not that you've won a class or although we like that too. It's just about enjoying the horses as well. Staying on Freddie, that's always a good one in the collecting ring. But yeah, so I do think it's really important to log the process. I love stationery, so having a good journal to write in is fantastic. And what's even better, Vic, is to go back and read it from start to finish at some point and see where you've come from. It's all right.
That's what the book's for, isn't it?
Yeah. So
you give away that material in a box.
I was going to say, you're just collecting material, aren't you? That's what you're up to.
When you both look back at it, is it part of the process, perhaps, you know, kind of evaluating if you haven't managed to achieve some of the goals that you set out to do, is trying to get to the root cause of why you didn't, what was getting in the way, and then kind of working on those to try and remove them? I know obviously time constraints probably is impossible to change, but there must be an element of that helps moving forward.
I think so. At the beginning of mine, it has your big goals that you would like to achieve, and then the last couple of years I've been really lucky because I've smashed them all. But also I think sometimes when you write them down, it's actually proven that when you write something down, I can't remember, there are papers that you do work harder to achieve them. And I think if you write your big goals down and then each month you're chipping away, you get there before you even recognize it, and then sometimes you exceed them. I think the thing is to be realistic in your goal setting, rather than, you know, I want to win at Hoy's, maybe, you know, I'd like to do the qualifier successfully, or be realistic about what you're doing with the horses that you're on, or taking time to watch others. I think there's so much. I think if you don't achieve something, I think you'd need to go back and see what you could put in place that would maybe help you better this year. Maybe you need to work differently, do some different lessons. I mean, Freddie, all his is flat work related, believe it or not, even though he's a jumping horse. Most our issues are flat related, and that's where we spend all the time. Okay, so what have I got next? I'm going to surprise myself. Oh, control the controllables. Okay, so this is about, when people get nervous, quite often it's even worse if you arrive late and you get there and you found out you've got a bit of tack missing and you don't know your test and you haven't walked the course, and all of those things can really affect your mindset and then affect your confidence. So one of the things that I would definitely say to riders is control the controllables. So I love to arrive early. There's one particular show that I go to and they'll go, "Oh, Joanne, your class doesn't start for an hour and a half." I'm like, "Yeah, but I need to go for a wee and I need to have a chat and I need to see everybody." And then I'm in the right headspace. And checklists for you and your horse. I mean, my famous thing is I once arrived in Scotland and I'd only put one horse on the lorry, didn't have it on my checklist. And it was back in the day when we didn't have cameras and my dad was driving and I'd done my halfway there journey check and I was like, "Oh no, there's only one horse on the lorry." And I didn't tell him till I got there because I thought he'd be quite cross. Knowing your course, one of the things riders quite struggle with are tests or courses, and so I do try to do some like imagery or help them learn different ways to plan their course. Planning your route to the shows, knowing where you're going. I'm not sure I should admit this online, but I got diverted off the M1 and removed the steps off my lorry on the side of a museum once, but that was a long time ago.
Whoops.
I think we're all learning from your mistakes, Jo, in actual fact.
But the three things that you can control are your attitude and your effort. So bringing that forward, you can control that. Okay. Enjoy the progress and celebrate the progress. So this is about what we're just really discussing about the end goal. It's all right to have the biggies, but we do need some small ones that we can tick off on the way. And these are some of these. Don't be distracted by others and what they say you should be doing. So quite often I get people come in and say, well, my friends are jumping 90. And I'm like, oh, well, what are you comfortable doing? 70, but they say I should be doing 90. Well, no, don't be distracted by other people think you should be doing. Stick to your journey. This one is for Vic. Don't be drawn in by social media. All that glitters is not gold. So quite often, people only ever post their really good things on social media. And so you could be at a show and you could see somebody have an awful round, but the photographer caught one amazing picture and that's the picture they've posted and that's what everybody sees of their show, when actually that's not the truth. And I go out of my way to share my ups and downs, and quite often they're the things, my downs and how I deal with them, are what get a response from people, because oh, Joanne, you know, it's nice to see you fall off. I thought, oh, thanks. But actually what the meaning is, you know, it's nice to see, you know, how other people deal with it and not just all the good bits. So Vic, what do you have to say on that?
Yes, I've got a very different perception of this particular area now to what I would have said even just a year ago. So now I can fully appreciate social media is a place to share all of those positive experiences. Like we've just said, you know, you want to remember all of the wins that you celebrated that day, even if you had a shocker. I think posting the good parts of everything, and I now see it from a different viewpoint, is actually, it doesn't make me feel negative anymore. So I fully understand that people post the good bits because they're the bits that they want to remember and cherish, not the shit that perhaps makes you feel a little bit like you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve. And yes, it makes you really relatable. But for me now, I've made this living and this brand that I've created off people almost not enjoying my misfortune, but really relating to my slightly more negative traits, which I've classed as negative because I've lacked confidence. And it's made me almost stay in this low confidence persona for longer than I probably should have. And that is because I felt that I need to do more for the people that still feel like that. So I ought to show the other side of the coin. And now, since I've been doing this more for myself and my progression, and only showing the bits that I'm happy showing and the bits that I feel proud of, I feel completely different about my look back at my diary. So it's very personal to me now. It is not for anybody else. It's not for sponsorship deals. It's not for paid advertising. It is purely for me to enjoy the feeling of like those wins that I should be celebrating, whether it makes me feel big-headed or not. I've now just decided that that's how I'd like to do it. And I just think it has come with quite a few people unfollowing me and quite a few negative comments on social media. It's really, really difficult to avoid them, even if you're not a dick. You know, I'm sorry, Katie, for swearing. Probably should have put a disclaimer out at the beginning, but I think people know what they're getting.
We know what you mean.
So I just feel that sometimes you can get really drawn in. If you've posted something that's opened you up to a bit of vulnerability personally, and you didn't feel like that was your best side, I think the comments that you then get are even more cutting and destroying than if you posted like the good ones and you think, oh, well, I was happy with that, so you can go yourself. I just feel like sometimes it leaves you more vulnerable, and that's the position that I've chosen not to put myself in, because everybody will understand that having the following that I have online and that anybody has online, you open yourself up to people that are just arseholes. I've got no other words, sorry, no adjectives to share other than people's opinions of themselves reflect onto others, and they might be negative, and that's what you're getting from that particular person on that day. They feel the need to comment something that makes you feel really inadequate, and that isn't a reflection on you, it's not a reflection on the content that you've posted, but it's so easy to be drawn in by it, and it affects your whole life. Your whole life. It ruins your Friday night, it ruins your Saturday morning, it ruins your ride on a Saturday afternoon. You don't want to go out on a Saturday night because you're miserable about what somebody said about you on the internet. It's so all-consuming that I think it's really important to remember, one, why you're even putting things on social media in the first place. Is it for you as a person? Is it for sponsorship and brand deals? Is it, is it purely a marketing platform for you? You really need to align your values, and then you understand whether to be drawn in by it or not. So I think that's probably a long way around the coin, but it's really important that lots of people's highlight reels, but also, it's their journey, it's their choice, and it's their content. So I think it's all very personal, and unless it's branded as a business or it's really inviting people's comments or advice, then I just think it's best to stay in your own lane, is where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like we said earlier, if you've given 110% and it didn't go right, then you've still given 110%, haven't you? Doesn't mean it has to go
and you
perfect.
can still be proud of that, despite what people say.
Proud of that. And like going back to knowing your own journey, I know that on a particular horse one day I went in the ring and my goal was to go through the timing, like stay on board it, come out the other side. And I did, and it probably obliterated every single fence. And I came out the ring going, yeah, well done, with about 48 faults. And people probably thinking, my God, what's wrong with her? But I was super happy with how that went. And it was my journey and it was my horse. And the other thing is about on social media, I do post my fails, but I don't ever post something that I don't want people to see or that I don't want people to comment on. And people can offer their opinion, but as long as you know and you know your own opinion, I think that's fine. I posted a video the other day falling off, and someone said, I'd have thrown you off if you'd have socked me in the gob and kicked me like that. And I didn't. I absolutely didn't. And I've just wrote, but I didn't know. But obviously that person felt the need to write something nasty. And I think it's about sticking with your guns, knowing yourself and knowing your own values, and not being drawn into what other people have to say.
And I think it is, and what you said about like values, it really hits home, because I know my own values, and I know that I'm a good, honest, genuine person that wants to help others. And over the years, I have been berated for being just this money-making marketing mouse wheel that is just churning out content to try and get more views or whatever it is. And I just feel like my values have always been really strong, but actually, if you're in a position where you're wavering over, setting up a YouTube channel or starting an Instagram account, just do it for the right reasons, and it will be so enjoyable.
Yeah. And then just going back to the goals, I put celebrate the progress and ensure to tick off the little goals, which we was talking about earlier. And in my book, sometimes I'll write next to them, if I achieve this, what I can have. So that might be a new saddle cloth, or so I can explain to my husband, well, I did do this, so I've earned myself my saddle cloth. And I might have 20 already, but it's absolutely fine. So don't be afraid to tick off the little goals along the way and enjoy the journey, because once you've got to the destination, you're done. So just enjoy the journey is what I would say. Okay. So this is the most important, and this is where you have your camps, and with me and my coaching is surround yourselves with people who believe in you and your goals. You don't need that negativity in your life. So I've put here friends, family, my groom, she's like my comfort blanket. I wouldn't go to a show without her. Yeah, she is my comfort blanket. your coach, your dentist, your physio, farrier, saddler, and this links nicely in your nutritionist. So before I hand over to Katie, Vic, have you got any more that you would like to add to this about
yeah, just about surrounding yourself with the right people as well. I think I've banged the drum enough, but I think they always say, and I read it somewhere years ago and it stuck with me, is that you are like the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. So the 5 people that are closest to you in your circle is what you project as a person. And actually, over the last few years, I have developed a really, really nice one friendship group, which I've never really had before. I've developed a really nice team of coaches that come to events with me, and the camps we run in particular really highlight how and it used the word tribe, because people use it a lot, don't they? And you find that group of people that, one, align with the values that you hold, 2, are really kind to one another and themselves, and 3, really want the same things as you. They all have a common interest, and that's the love of horses. And I just feel like the camps that Jo helps me run and the team that we've got around us, it all aligns with that really special surrounding yourself with the right people. And I don't think across like 14 camps that we've done now, I just don't think we've ever had anybody that's been misaligned yet. And everybody has been there for the same reason. Everyone's been kind to one another. And I just think they're the people that I want to surround myself with. They're the people that are like-minded like me, that make me feel confident as a person. And it's interesting when it comes around to a show situation and the inner circle I've got are all busy, and I have now 100 people that I could call on that would make me feel confident on a day's eventing, because I've found those people in my life that align with me, that support me, that are there cheering me on with absolutely no agenda. And I think they're the key to confidence. The people that you surround yourself with are the key to confidence. If I've ever got an issue with anything, one with the horse, if it's sad or happy or confusion, or I need advice, we've got a WhatsApp group, haven't we, Jo? And I come in there often and I ask advice from the people that I trust. And it's really important to have people that you trust and know that whatever you tell them doesn't go any further, or you trust their advice and their kindness to help you through a particular situation. And that's what confidence is, isn't it? It's the building blocks to make you feel self-belief. And I think if other people are telling you that you're a good person, that your morals are right, that you're doing the right thing, come on, Vic, you can do it, I just think without that, you're never going to have confidence. So it's building those foundations for like a more confident next year, the following year, and having those people around you that you really trust. So that's it. I'm going to stop, because otherwise we'll go way on. We'll be here for hours.
Yes, your washing up will still be there, Vic.
Still in. Don't look behind me.
Brilliant. I think there's a question which, if I do a few slides just on the nutrition side, if you don't mind giving some thought, because I think it's a really pertinent question, because it relates to worrying. And I think this is again, I could be wrong, stereotyping completely here, but I think it's quite a female trait to care about what other people think about you. And so perhaps it'll give you a bit of thinking time as to what your advice for that would be if I just move on from here into some of the nutrition, and we will come back and do Q&As at the end of this. But just as you've both, there are so many parallels between setting goals and I love the SMART acronym. So in the context of things like weight loss and managing a horse's weight, setting yourself specific goals and measuring it, which we do with weigh bridges or weigh tapes, being realistic, giving yourself time frames. There are so many parallels, but in this context, what I just sort of wanted to talk about really is the role that nutrition can have. And why is it important? Well, obviously it's never going to guarantee that you will win, but certainly poor nutrition and poor diet can increase your chances of losing quite dramatically, and obviously that's increased the sort of more competitive and the higher levels of work you're doing. So, you know, as a nutritionist, and I guess as horse owners, what we're trying to achieve is that balance between health and performance. So, you know, our horses' welfare and well-being is paramount, and we somehow have to find a way of keeping them healthy, but then asking them to go and do crazy things like racing and jumping fences, and that's very much what, you know, we as nutritionists are there to kind of help all levels of horse rider or trainer with, really. And it is a particular challenge with the horse because this animal should be spending most of its time eating. So if we want to put it in a lorry, drive for a couple of hours, compete over a period of maybe 2-3 hours, if you're doing multiple disciplines or different classes on the same day. So again, we're trying to balance that sort of natural behaviour or desire or need to eat with the demands of a competition and travelling. And I think it's fair to say most people would be aware of things like slow release energy versus quick release energy. So we know there's an impact on the type of energy that we supply and how it might affect our horse's behaviour. But we're also really starting to understand a lot more about the relationship between diet, the microbiota, so all the bugs that live in the horse's digestive system, the effect that has on their health, and also now behaviour. And you know, there's a lot of work done in humans as well to show links between the microbiome, behaviour and mood, depression, all those sorts of things. So we're scratching the surface when we're talking horse nutrition, but I'm sure we're going to hear much more about that over the next sort of 5-10 years. And we're going to explore a bit more about what we do know in some of the subsequent webinars. But today I just really wanted to highlight a couple of studies that we have that support the case for the sort of fibre-based diets. And just to give you, again, these are recent studies that have just been published this year, some insight into just how big a contribution fibre can actually make, because we have the perception that if we start competing at higher levels, we default to feeding cereals, that's full of quick release energy, we're making our horses potentially more reactive, we're sort of, you know, going to line ourselves up for some more behavioural issues, which then can undermine our confidence. So these things are, you know, obviously all interlinked. So one of the older studies that we have, and this was something that we did actually do or fund at Dengie with a researcher based up in Scotland, so Louise Bulmer, who you can see in the picture, and it is published work. But we were looking and just trying to get some basic data to compare a cereal-based mix of a similar energy to a fibre and oil-based diet. And you can see the difference in the starch, 2% if you're putting fibre and oil into the horse, whereas it's 22% for a fairly traditional concentrate mix. The energy intake was the same, so the diets were matched, and we had a heart rate monitor, which you might just be able to see the horse has got a band around its middle, so it's just like a surcingle would be, and also things like the stopwatches to measure behavioural responses, so the time taken to get a horse or persuade a horse to do an action, which you'll see in a second. And it was all in an indoor school, trying to reduce the number of variables and things that might distract them. And they were divided into two groups, fed each of the diets for 28 days, so it crossed over, so all the horses did both diets, and we were just trying to see how reactive they would be to new situations. And you can see, I hope, in the photo, we had a curtain of sort of tapes that hung down between two jump wings, and then there was also a feed bowl which had white noise, so that kind of sound playing behind it, and the horse was allowed to just walk up to the bucket, and the time taken to measure how long it basically took them to be confident and happy enough to eat from the bucket. And then we also timed how long it would take the horse to be willing enough to walk through the strips of the red and white plastic. They were verbally encouraged to pass through, but no force applied, so they had to be willing to walk forward and through. And basically, we found that the cereal-based feeds meant that the horses were much more reactive. So they had higher heart rates and less consistent behaviour. So in effect, everything took longer to persuade them to do, because they were just seemingly, I suppose, to use a colloquial term, they were just a bit more on edge. And Louise did some subsequent work, which was with naive ponies. So whereas we'd used horses from the college sort of riding school, so some degree of obviously training prior to the study, they actually actually used naive ponies, so the Welsh ponies off the hill, very little handling prior to this test being carried out, so trying to reduce the variables of human interaction, and found the same sort of effect. So if they were fed starchy based feeds, then you had a more reactive animal in essence. So where do we go from there? Okay, we know that fibre-based diets are going to give you slow release energy. We can show that horses tend to be less reactive, they're more relaxed, their heart rates tend to be lower. So we've got sort of behavioural and physiological measurements to show that they should be, you know, more relaxed and easier to train. But can we actually fuel them at a decent level of work on a fibre-based diet? And that, as a nutritionist, is usually the preconception that I come up against the most. It's like, well, I've got to feed them cereals because I'm competing, I'm eventing or dressage or whatever. And that's really why this latest research from the Lab to Field research group, they're based in Dijon in France. We don't fund this study, even though it's using a lot of alfalfa in the ration. It's funded by the French government, would you believe? Because they actually value alfalfa as a really good sustainable crop. So the government is funding research to demonstrate its benefits. And they actually used a diet, and it was for standard bred, so in high level athletics sort of race training, performance horses. They fed them 82% alfalfa, in this case around 8 kilos, which is a combination of chopped and pelleted, and much lower proportions of oats than you typically see in animals competing at a high level, so around 2 kilos. So we're dramatically shifting the balance. Normally, if we went onto a race training yard, it would be the complete opposite of that ratio. You'd be feeding or seeing typically fed somewhere in the region of 6-7 kilos of a cereal-based ration, and if you're lucky, 1 to 2 kilos of alfalfa. What they found, alongside obviously lots of digestive health benefits, they actually found some potential metabolic benefits too. So there was no compromise in performance. All the horses on both diets were performing to the same level, achieving the same sort of speeds and sustaining them for the same sort of period of time. And it was over 8 weeks, this trial, so it was a reasonable time frame, wasn't just a single day. And they then also found that there was some metabolic efficiency benefits too. So in other words, if we're conditioning the horse to use more fibre as an energy source, it actually has benefits in terms of things like the waste products of energy metabolism as well. So there's more to come on these studies, but it's just some of the first evidence we've got that even horses at really high levels could have a predominantly fibre-based ration and not need very much cereal at all. And I think just bringing it back to some perhaps more performance horse rather than the racing animal sort of case studies. This one is a lady called Alicia Wilkinson, who's relatively local to us here in Essex. And Claire behind the scenes will be able to tell you much more about this as a case study than I can. But the reason I always utilise this as a case study is because I think the horse looks in exceptionally good condition. And if you want to know what a fit, athletic, healthy weight of horse is, for me, this is it. You can just see the ribs. You've got a good top line, good muscle tone. That's a healthy weight of an animal that's fit and going eventing. But long story short, she had a lot of issues with some diastemas, which had contributed to gastric ulcers. She'd lost a lot of weight very quickly. But actually, we got her back to a really healthy condition, as you can see there, with a forage or fibre-based diet. So some grass pellets and alpha beets. So it was all very short chopped, made into a mash because of diastemas, which are the gaps in the teeth. So she could eat much more easily. The weight came on. Obviously, the gastric ulcers were treated and addressed. And she's competing in a 3-star 3-day event. So, you know, a fibre-based diet is no barrier to being able to look amazing and compete at a really, you know, significant level. Obviously, you need to balance the diet. So all of those ingredients are typically straight feeds. So that's why the balance is really important. And it needs to be appropriate to the level of work the horse is doing. But other than that, in terms of your energy, it can come from fibre and oil. And that's how we keep these really super fit event horses sane enough to do dressage as well. So I think right fibre, right horse is key. And just to really reiterate the point that there is help available to you, as Jo and Vic have talked about, you know, surrounding yourself with the right people, getting the right advice is so important. And I've just put some of the feedback. I hope you can read it on your screens wherever you are, but the team here on Feedline do a fantastic job, and that's some of the feedback that we get on a sort of monthly basis. So it's there, make use of it. There's never any obligation to buy anything. It's just advice on the right thing to do for your horse. So please ask for help. It's all there for you. So I think we're probably back to any questions. Jo and Vic, have you had any thoughts on the how to kind of perhaps not care so much, or deal with how we care about what people think? What's your approach to managing that?
I quite often get asked this when I do talks, and I say it depends the situation, but quite often people are saying, oh, when they enter the ring, they're worried about what people think about them. And so I usually go around the room and say, when you're stood by the ring, what are you actually doing? And I'd say 99% of the people are learning the course. And anywhere else at a lesson or whatever, they might be observing, but I very rarely think they're judging. So I think this is a little bit more about you dealing with it yourself, as in going in the ring, and a little bit like being a blinkered horse. You're doing your thing. We discussed it earlier. It's your journey, and so whatever you're doing, does it matter that that person might be that stood at the side of the arena thinking, God, I wish I was doing that. They might not be judging at all. They might be admiring. And I think it's just a state of mind, and you've just got to, as a person, be in your zone and doing your thing, rather than being drawn into what other people might be thinking. And I know at Vic's camp, all the people at the side, no one's judging. They're all normally cheering, aren't they, or videoing or doing whatever. So
yeah, and interestingly, just you saying that about, if you're stood there thinking, I wonder what everyone's thinking about me, surely like everybody else is thinking the same. Yeah, like, so I just think even if they're not, just assume that that's the case. It's like picturing everyone with their clothes off, isn't it? So it's picturing everybody in the same position, vulnerable position that you feel in, is probably they're feeling exactly the same situation as well. And so I think it's really hard. And I know, Katie, you touched on the difference between men and women in terms of self-deprecation, and I tend to go a bit of a swerve in that I tend to disagree, in that one, living with, he won't mind me saying, a sensitive man, who is like a man's man, but very in touch with his feelings, and actually having had some guys on camps over the last year or so, I think they suffer with confidence in a very different way. And I think particularly surrounding balance for a lot of men is a real issue. I don't know whether it's something to do with your nutsack, guys, but I think there's definitely issues relating to balance and position in the saddle. I also think that because they are of a minority in the amateur field, you go to an event and it is probably 90% women, that they then feel a little bit like they are being watched a bit more. So I think I've had on one particular camp this year, and I think he's even watching now, Simon, who is exceptional to just, 99% women, there he is, pops up. Speak of the devil and he shall appear. But he is a prime example of a guy that's taking himself completely out of his comfort zone and just really having a good crack at it. And I just think it's really encouraging men to do the same. And it's really nice for me to be able to have photographs of the guys coming on camps, because they are sometimes as warranted as needing this help as others. Another guy I like to use an example is Adam. Jo, you know him as well. And I just think he has now taken to endurance like a duck to water, and he's incredible at it. And it's just finding his particular area and niche. So I think he felt a lot of issues around jumping and how it felt for him, and the nervousness surrounding jumping, and finding endurance was the best thing he's ever done, because now he's competing at a national level within a year, and he's doing really well on a horse that is, I know, on a completely fibre diet with Dengie, and is really sustaining the efforts of endurance. And I just think it's as prevalent for men as it is for women. I just think probably because at an amateur level we're not as aware, it's easy for us to assume that women are self-deprecating, but I think a lot of men are too. I think
I was going to say though, do you think men are just not so happy to chat about it?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the thing. It's like
Yeah.
women are a little bit more happy to say that how they're feeling, where men maybe not so much in the face of so many women.
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes it's perhaps they joke about it more. I don't know
Yes.
if is they're gonna, yeah, it's more. I was curious as whether you see it as a coach in the sense of how you need to coach them. Do you do it differently to overcome their fears or concerns? And you know, I don't know if it would make any difference in terms of how you coach them.
When I'm coaching, I just think I give them the information, and like I said to you, that knowledge helps confidence. So if wherever they're not feeling information, I try to make them competent in that area, and hopefully giving them competence will then give them confidence.
Yeah. The other interesting comment you made, which I was sort of scribbling down, was you know, kids, and then what changes between kids and adulthood, and when do you think it does change, and what is it that contributes when we have that sort of fearlessness as a kid riding and going off and doing crazy things? And again, we're kind of generalizing to some degree because there's always the exception. But
I think
what
the
happens?
thing is when we start to have consequences. I mean, parenthood is a massive thing. I have so many riders come back to me and they said, I've had children and I've had a gap, and now I've come back to riding and I have no confidence. But the difference is they now have little people that rely on them. So if something happens to them, it's different to when you're young, free and single. If you fall off, and again, when you're at school, if you fall off, you get a pot on your arm and you get to skive. Where when you're an adult and you can't go to work and earn money, that's very, very different. And so I definitely think it's the consequences. Most people are frightened of falling off, not the actual falling off, but what happens? Can I go to work? They're the sort of things that are always on people's mind. So it's not the actual falling off, it's what will happen if they do. And so then quite often it makes them perhaps a little bit more tense down the rein and more likely to fall off. And if they do fall off, if you're tense, you're more likely to hurt yourself. It's
Yeah,
a little bit
and you see kids and they're just going
playing
for it, aren't they?
around.
Because it is maybe just a lack of consequence. I just think three
And
sheets to the wind. Everyone needs to be riding a bit more like their inner 12-year-old child.
I wish I could bottle up. Sometimes when I'm teaching the kids, I wish I could bottle up what they've got and give it to some adults that really, really need it. That's what I would love to be able to do.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How life takes over sometimes, and we then start to worry about consequences and then what everybody else thinks.
I was just going to say one final thing is sometimes what people don't realise is life can affect how they ride. So if you've had a really tough day, sometimes that goes down the rein to the horse. And I'll often, as a rider comes into the lesson, I'll say, you know, how's your day been? And that what they tell me is whether we do something tricky or whether we just have a nice time, because like how your mind is, what you're thinking about can really affect what's going on. And sometimes when people say, oh, I don't think I should ride today, no, don't. Give your pony a pat and give it some tea, because it really won't care. But if you've had a bad day, just maybe spending some time with your horse is better for your confidence than getting on and maybe not having a good session.
And if I may ask one last question, in the sense of how do you filter out, or what would your advice be to someone if they're getting lots of advice? I think there's so many people, and you've both alluded to it, giving you advice or having an opinion or whatever, and very well meaning it, and on many occasions. How do you kind of sift through and try and kind of cut to finding the people that are, I suppose, the ones that you should be listening to?
I don't know, like I think that's going back to finding your troop. Did you say, Vic? Finding the coach, your tribe, finding the coach that suits you, finding the people that believe in your journey, and they're the ones you listen to. Don't try not to get absorbed by everybody else.
And I think as well, you know, finding somebody that that their values and the way they look after their horses and the way their management system works, I think really do a lot of research into that, and trust the opinions of them based on their own methods. You know, you don't want to be like, do as I do, not as I say. You know,
No.
I feel like I've grown up really fortunately around some really incredible horse people that were, one, very traditional, two, all fiber-based feeders, and I just feel like it's completely shaped me as a horse person as an adult, because I've always had an old-fashioned mentality that people have always felt it's nice to ask a question to, because it's based on traditional values and actually the probably more natural way to keep a horse. And you know, I know Claire and I have had several conversations around my management of my horses, and they are in a field touched minimally. They don't come in, I barely touch them, and they are fed once, maybe twice a day if they need it, but everything is kept as natural as possible for the animal. And I think lots of people create or can create issues with their horses with over management as well, and I think that is also surrounded by too many people having involvement. So you need to be trying this rug, you need to be putting a massage rug on, you need to be icing its legs, you need to be, you know, there's so many factors that other people can chip in, and you think, oh, I should be doing this, I should be buying this, I should be feeding this, you know, there's too many options. And I think when you're getting too much advice from too many people, it's really, really hard to then actually bring it back to the natural care of the horse.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming, can't it? Feeling, and again, I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to want to do the very best for their horse, because we all love our animals, but actually sometimes less is more, isn't it? It's just go back to basics and simplify your world if you possibly can. Brilliant. So where can people, because this is also being recorded and will be posted on YouTube, so other people will be viewing it, where can people find details of camps or your services and training and coaching if they want to?
So we had this conversation before we came on this call, didn't we, Jo? And I do feel like, so my camps for 2024 are completely sold out. There are unmounted spaces left, so if you wanted to come not on a horse and enjoy the weekend, you can still do that, and
it would be great fun.
all the training and the demos, and you get rider alignment and physio and hypnotherapy now, thanks to my new friend Louise. So I think you could come as an unmounted camper, but Jo is going to be running camps alongside these as well. So her JJ equestrian camps are also great. Similar format, just like probably you could come as a day camper, can't you, Jo? And you can come in and out, and you don't have to commit to the whole time frame and cost. So I think Jo's going to have 4 or 5 of her own camps next year.
I am not.
Come on, Jo. I'm pushing it. Come on, she can do it.
You can probably find me generally coaching in different venues monthly is probably where you'll find me. I may run a couple of camps.
Yeah, creeping up.
If people Google JJ Equestrian Services,
JJ Equestrian Services, I've got a Facebook page. They can contact me via that. Also, I'm happy to do further like talk around confidence or goal setting sessions if that would be helpful to them.
Yeah.
And Jo, would you do so I know obviously not everyone's going to be local to us, would you go further afield for a set number of people?
What do you mean?
Teaching
for
a day's teaching.
I do a day's teaching further afield, but not just for 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, it just remains for me to thank you both very much indeed. And I think, you know, one of the things I've really taken away from here is the fact that the reason you're both so inspirational is your honesty and your openness. And I think, you know, it needs to be encouraged more, doesn't it, with people, so that actually if we see both sides to everybody's life, then it gives a much more balanced view and we don't tend to beat ourselves up quite so much. But thank you both for giving up your time this lunchtime. It's been much appreciated and a fascinating insight to what you do. So
you're very welcome.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having us.
No, our pleasure. Thank you everyone for attending, and recording will be live in probably either was it Friday today? No, it'll be next week now then. So next week, look out for that on our YouTube channel. Brilliant. Thank you everyone.
Bye,
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.